In this lesson, we're going to learn how to subtract integers. Before we begin, I want us to get rid of this word subtraction. And I don't want to think of subtraction when I'm working with integers. Instead, I want us to think of the term opposite of. I'm going to create a phrase saying -6 with the opposite of -2. And that's how I'm going to go about solving this. So let me show you how that works. Okay, so now I have this here, -6 with the opposite of -2. And I put in this red arrow to represent my -6. If it doesn't say so, I'm always going to start at 0. So I'm going to go ahead and place this arrow at 0, and you're going to see it takes me to my -6. Now I'm going to bring in an arrow to represent -2. So this arrow now is going to represent -2. However, when I read my sentence again, I say -6 with the opposite of -2, I need to put an arrow that's the opposite of this -2. So the opposite of a negative is a positive arrow. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this positive arrow, and I'm going to get rid of this negative one. And now I'm going to go ahead and put this where my last sentence ended up, right there. And so I can say -6, I can say -6 minus -2. So I have -6 with the opposite of -2 equals -4. Let's go ahead and look at another example. This time I have 3 with the opposite of -3. So I have a +3 here with the opposite of -3. I'm going to go ahead and put in an arrow to represent +3. Okay, so now we place this +3 arrow. So we have +3 here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start again and place it at 0, and we're going to see that it goes to +3. So that's the first step. Now, I'm going to go ahead and create an arrow to represent -3. So here's my -3, my red arrow. You can see if I were to place it here, that would take me back to 0. However, because we're saying the opposite of -3, I'm not going to use a negative arrow. The opposite of negative is positive, so I need to change this to a positive arrow. So now I've done the opposite. I have my -3 arrow here. I have my positive arrow here. I no longer need the negative since I'm working with the opposite. And I'm going to take this arrow and I'm going to place it right at the 3 again. And you'll see that 3 with the opposite of -3 equals 6. Now I'm going to teach you the process that you can use to solve problems without having to create a number line each time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the verbiage the same. I'm going to say I have -5 with the opposite of -7. But in this case, I'm going to change my subtraction sign here to an addition sign. And when I do that, I'm going to also change the following number. So -5 stays the same. My subtraction becomes an addition sign. And my negative number is going to become a positive number. So now I can use the rules of addition that I've learned before. I have a negative and a positive. It means I subtract. So 7 minus 5 is 2. And my larger absolute value belongs to 7. So my answer is +2. So once again, the steps were simple. I left the first number just as I saw it, -5. I changed subtraction. I used the opposite, addition. And then my second value, I used the opposite. In this case, it was -7, and the opposite of -7 is +7. And then I used the rules of addition that I learned earlier. Now here's a problem that will typically confuse students. They see a -7 with the opposite of -7, and they instantly think 14. That is incorrect. Let's go through the process, the steps, and talk about it. First digit stays the same. The opposite of subtraction is addition. The opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. Now, because I have a negative and a positive and I'm doing addition, I follow those rules and it tells me to subtract. So 7 minus 7 equals 0. So therefore, I've gone through the process here of staying the same, using the opposite, subtraction, to addition, and the opposite of negative 7, positive 7. And then simply using the rules of addition that I've learned earlier, with the final answer of 0. Now here's a very similar looking problem to the one we just had, but in this case we have a positive 7 with the opposite of negative 7. I'm going to follow the same steps. 7 stays the same. My subtraction sign, we go to the opposite, becomes addition, and the opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. So now I have positive 7 plus positive 7. And the rules of addition tells us if they're the same sign, we add them together. 7 plus 7 equals 14. And because there's positive, my answer is positive. So subtracting integers is as easy as changing the subtraction into an addition and switching for the opposite and doing your addition rules for integers.